There are 6.7 billion people in the world, and out of 6.7 billion people, 901 million are on Facebook, 555 are on Twitter, and close to 12 million are on Pinterest. That is a phenomenon. And according to Merriam-Webster Dictionary, a phenomenon is someone or something that is popular or impressive based on its abilities or qualities. This is the social phenomenon because it has changed the way we connect, we write, we read, we interact with each other. It has changed the lives. It has changed the lines of communication. So what does the youth of this generation say about this phenomenon, this social phenomenon that is slowly but surely changing us?
I have a Facebook because, really? I don't know. No, I don't really like social media actually, but it's a necessity. Not really, it's not.
No. I mean, it depends what you call an addict, because I'm not on it every single day, especially Twitter. And I guess Twitter is supposed to be every other second.
I actually have gotten rid of my account several times. And I've gotten back on.
When I post on Instagram, I click the Facebook button and it goes straight to Facebook. So pretty sure people get annoyed at that, but I can't worry.
I used to spend a lot of time on it, just looking at pictures. Now I think I don't spend as much time, but when I do spend a lot of time.
I go on Instagram a lot because you can just look at pictures. You can be addicted to Instagram without people knowing that you're addicted to Instagram.
I feel like Instagram is Facebook in its purest form.
At Facebook, no, I don't really feel that. It's not that important. I mean, I'm not gonna go, oh no, Facebook is gone if it just disappeared. I mean, I can talk to people. I'm not gonna let, I like Facebook, but I'm not gonna let it control me, because that's what video games are for.
I know people care about what I post because of the many likes that I get. It depends on, I mean, if I get like 5 likes, they didn't like it. If I get like 65, hey, they like that, so I'm gonna post pretty much the same thing probably the next time.
Putting your relationship in Facebook is great, you know. Girls and guys get to know you're taken, you know, and then you're left alone, which is a great thing, you know. You're not being pursued by crazy individuals.
Although it has reminded me of the occasional friend's birthday, which just makes you kind of a horrible person.
Hey, let's see what's going on in everybody else's world, since my world is going nowhere right now.
The emotion things, that's what gets me. Feeling exhausted, well, go take a nap. Get off Facebook.
I know some people are like, oh my goodness, the world is gonna end. Facebook crashed, But that's not how it happens. Life's still gonna go on whether Facebook or Twitter run or not. So it's not my problem.
The youth of today have different opinions and thoughts on social media and its use. But what is social media and why is it so explosive? The professionals have the answer.
What is social media? Well, it has its roots back in social networking. If we think about all the social networks that we have in our lives, we have always had those. We've always had networks of friends. We've always had networks of people that we work with, our families, people that are part of our support system. And so when you think of social media adds to it a way of doing the networking, but through the internet, through video, through mobile devices. And so it's part technology and it's part of socialization that we've always done. And so when you put the two together now, you have social media. Why does social media exist? Well, for today, the reason it is so explosive is because it's so accessible. Everyone can utilize it. It's free in most cases, doesn't cost anything to participate, and it's very easy to use, very user-friendly. It's quite intuitive, as we like to say. So people know how to plug into it and people know how to use it, and so that's part of it. The other thing is it's so accessible. People can use their home computer, they can use a tablet computer, they can use their phone in most cases if they have a smartphone, and so it's very accessible. And that's probably why it has been so explosive.
Social media has changed the English language in many ways. Do we read more or do we watch more since we stare at the screen so often? We need to observe our linguistic habits and perhaps even preserve the ways of the past.
It is very interesting to me how the internet and how social media is changing the English language. And I really shouldn't be that surprised because technology has always done that over the years, thousands of years. If you go back as far as the Anglo-Saxons, when they had only a oral language, the language that was used for literature, that the poets and the Scots that would perform poetry for entertainment, they had the language that they wrote, the English that they wrote, had to be more poetic in nature. It had to have more repetition in it to make it easy to memorize, because that was the only way to communicate the language. Then comes the printing press. And because the printing press made it much easier to record language, it was cheaper, it was faster. You could now set out an essay that would detail a line of thought, and the sentences became longer and the thoughts became more detailed, and the language essentially changed with it. So when you introduce the internet into our language, it's actually gone the other direction. The way the web pages are set up, you have small chunks of information on each page. There are hyperlinks that you can click on a word and it will take you to another page. And you do not have language now that is laid out in a linear fashion where you start at the beginning of a document, you read all the way through to the end of the document. You actually can jump around from idea to idea and maybe never read a complete thought. And that's going to change the way we write. We write in smaller chunks now. We write in more concise language. And it is changing the way we write. So it is very interesting to see how modern language will change in the future. If it will continue that trend, and I think it will, our language has become much, much more concise. It started with Hemingway, but it's continuing with the influence of the internet.
The advantages of social media are obvious. It lets us connect, it lets us communicate, it lets us share across borders and seas. But what are the disadvantages? Are we willing to look at them with its dangers and with its warnings?
A lot of social media has its roles as far as being positive, but there's also negative implications that have been documented medically with social media, and that's the concern that I have and other physicians have around the world. There's a complex mechanism in the brain using dopamine that has been affected both positively and negatively by social media. Dopamine is a chemical that's released from the midbrain that transfers chemical signals to other nerve cells in the body, specifically the brain, that typically provide a positive feedback. We've known for a long time, for example, that exercise, when you exercise, you increase your dopamine levels and you feel better when you complete your exercise regimen. Well, that has also been documented with social media. The problem is, on the flip side of that, there's also been negative implications with dopamine as it relates to social media. There are some people that, because of their addictive behavior, consume large amounts of dopamine, or gets transferred in large amounts from the neural cells. And in doing that, we may be depleting dopamine in certain individuals. And that creates depression. It creates a negative feedback as far as a high. So what happens in that scenario is people then require more of it to satisfy their needs.
But what also was kind of interesting is there is one danger or one potential downfall of social media that most people aren't aware of. And it really is part of a larger danger that's connected with the internet. And Nicholas Carr, in his book, What the Internet is Doing to Our Brains, brings out a issue that I don't think most people realize. He argues that the internet is changing the way our brains function. And this is really fascinating. And it's because of the way the web pages are designed, where the information is designed to appear up on the screen very quickly, and then the user of the screen is encouraged to move as quickly as possible to the next screen. So what happens is that we are seeing only chunks of information in small groupings. We are tending to skim the information on the page. And what it's doing is it's training our brains to not have a very long attention span. It's training our brains to actually skim information rather than to read deeply and critically. And because we're in information overload, the information that we're taking in never gets beyond our short-term memory into our long-term memory. It actually takes time to actually step back away from information and assimilate it and ponder it for it to enter your long-term memory. But if you are constantly before a screen and having the screens change very quickly and information coming at you at a very high speed, you never get that chance to ponder the information and take it in. So you could argue that internet use, with social media included, is actually training us to be dumber, because it's retraining the way our brain functions.
There's good and bad to come in the future. It's one of those things, though, where we have to just use a lot of common sense. We have to think about what we're doing. It's just like anything else. I remember as a kid, everyone had a telephone, and parents always say, it's just like if a stranger comes to the door, you don't answer the door. If some stranger calls you on the phone, you don't talk to them. You don't tell them Mom and Dad's not here. Say they're busy right now. See, these are the kinds of things that in the future we're going to have to train our children on, because they'll be integrated with social media as well. And I'm one of those, I prefer to train my children as opposed to try and hide it from them and then let them discover it accidentally and then get trapped by it. So I'm more proactive.
This is the social phenomenon. No one can predict where we will go from here or where we will end up. The only thing we can gather is that our social phenomenons can take us away if we allow them to. Technology has changed us, but we shouldn't let it define us.